Hey everybody, it's Raven Maureen, and I am back today with a new sew along from McCall's 8389 right here out of their new spring line. And we're going to be making View B, this gorgeous mini skirt. So go ahead and grab your sewing tools and let's get started. So this is McCall's 8389. We're going to be making View B. Now, if we look on the back here, it does have some suggested fabrics. That would be cotton blends, denim, linen, and twill. You will also need some lightweight interfacing. And for View B, we will be using a 20-inch zipper. I recommend that you definitely take a look at the finished garment measurements and definitely consider your waist and your hip measurements for the skirts over here. You're going to need pattern piece number 13, cut 4 fabric, 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 12, cut 2 of fabric. Pattern piece number 11, cut 2 of fabric, 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 5, cut 4 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 6, cut 2 on the fold and 1 of interfacing on the fold. Pattern piece number 7, cut 1 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 10, the side front, and you're going to cut 2. Pattern piece number 8, cut 2. Pattern piece number 9, the middle front, cut 2. Pattern piece number 3, cut 1 on the fold, and this is the back. And pattern piece number 4, this is the side back, and we're going to cut 2. Before we start sewing, I want to share a bit of prep work. On pattern pieces 8, 9, and 10, there are trace lines for where the pocket is going to go on the skirt. I want to show you how you can trace those lines directly onto your fabric. It's important to make sure that you're tracing the mirror pieces of each one since they will be on both sides of the front. Take a pin and mark each point with a dot. Connect those dots with a straight ruler, and you want to make sure you're using a soluble marker for this. And you can even take this step further and sew the line onto the fabric as well. This step will help you further down the line with the skirt construction. By now, all dots, markings, and notches should be finished. Go ahead and take pattern piece number 10 and pattern piece number 9, matching up those notches that we did earlier, and we want to sew those right sides together. Then you want to connect pattern piece number 8 to the notches on pattern piece number 9. Again, right sides together and sew. Complete this step for both sides. Now that all the front pieces are sewn together, finish those edges and press the seam allowances away from the center. Now we're going to work on our top stitching for those pieces. Now, depending on your machine settings, you'll need to adjust your needle, and I recommend adjusting your stitch length as well if you are working with a thicker denim. On both sides of the skirt front, sew 2 rows of top stitching on the front and side front seams. Your first stitch should be about 1/4 inch from the edge, and then when you get to your second stitch, that should be about 3/8 from the first stitch. take pattern piece number 11 and finish that raw edge, and then go ahead and matching those notches, pin and place right sides together. The facing should be on the front edge where the pocket will eventually go, and you may have to trim here just a little bit. And once you're finished with that, go ahead and sew 5/8 from the edge. Go ahead and clip into those corners. We don't want to clip past the stitch line. Depending on how thick your fabric is, it's going to take a little bit of time to do this next step, but we are going to turn this right side in, and we're going to need our iron for this. So you want to make sure that you give it a really good press and make sure that those corners are squared up. And then go ahead and base stitch those upper edges and understitch that lower edge there. We are moving on to our pocket flap, which is pattern piece number 13. One of those pieces should be interfaced, and we are going to pin those right sides together, and we are going to sew that at 5/8. And then we are going to trim those corners, making sure that we have nice pointy corners, and we can use any sort of sharp edge to do that. Give it a good press and then do a top stitch 3/8 of a seam allowance. Then we are moving on to pattern piece number 12, and we're going to sew 5/8 from the edge, and we are going to press that inward. Now we're going to add the pocket to the skirt front, and the pocket will actually be sewn on the wrong side of the skirt front. So pin the pocket to the front, placing those seam lines along the placement lines, and we are going to top stitch through all thicknesses. Do not be shy about using as many pins as possible here, and I highly recommend taking your time with this step at the sewing machine. Again, lengthening your stitch length to sew through your fabric, and you want to make sure you complete this for both sides. While we're at the machine, we are going to take pattern piece number 12 and pin the flap to the upper edge of the front skirt piece, and we are going to baste across the upper edge. Go ahead and do that for both sides. Both skirt front pieces should be complete, so we are moving on to our back. This is pattern piece number 3, which we cut on the fold earlier, and we are going to pin and sew pattern pieces number 4 on both sides, matching up those notches that you see there. This is pattern piece number 4. At the sewing machine, we will sew this at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we will finish those edges as well. And of course, just like how we did the skirt front pieces, we will top stitch 2 rows at each seam. Next, we will take our 2 front pieces and stitch those to the back at the sides. We want to sew this at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we will not be top stitching this part. Once you've given that a good press, we are going to stay stitch the upper edge of the skirt. We are moving on to our yoke pieces, matching up those notches. Sew together pattern piece number 6 with both pieces of 5. For the interfaced yoke pieces, we are going to sew that exactly the same way, but we will press the lower seam allowance of this one at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Pin the uninterfaced yoke to the upper edge of the skirt, matching centers and notches. And then we are going to sew this together at 5/8 and press the seam toward the yoke. By now, this is what your skirt should look like. With wrong sides together, pin the interfaced yoke facing to the yoke the exact same way, matching centers and notches. And we are going to take this to our sewing machine where we will stitch at the beginning of the sides, across the top, and down the other side of the yoke. Next, we are going to sew 2 rows of top stitching to the lower edge of the yoke, catching that bottom hem. You may slip stitch this part to secure it, but I also recommend using an abundance of pins, as you see here. Moving on to our waistband, press the seam allowance of the unnotched side up, and then we are going to pin our waistband to the upper edge of the yoke, and you will probably need to clip as needed on the waistband since it does have a straight edge and the yoke has a curved edge. Once your waistband is attached, trim the seam allowance to reduce the bulk in that area, and then we are going to move on to our zipper. I went ahead and pressed my waistband near the dot marking, and we are going to go ahead and open and separate the zipper, and we are going to pin the zipper face down along the edge. Make sure the teeth are facing the opposite of the raw edge. Pin along the tape, and then using a zipper foot, sew down the zipper, and we're going to do this for both sides. Once the zipper is sewn down, tuck the tape under the waistband and turn the seam allowance to the inside of the skirt, making sure that the zipper teeth are facing outward. Give this a top stitch through the waistband and along the edge of the zipper. After top stitching the edge of the zipper, go ahead and do 2 more rows at the bottom of the waistband and 2 more rows of top stitching at the top of the waistband. And this is what your skirt should look like. The last thing we're going to do is we are going to add our hem. So go ahead and fold it in once and then fold it in again. And then you're going to do 2 rows of more top stitching. And then you are all set. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching this sew along. I can't wait to see what you create. If you're not already following me on social media, you can follow me at Raven Maureen right here on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.